A scratch handicap is widely seen as the pinnacle of amateur golf, but what does it actually take to get to scratch? What do the 1% of golfers who ever reach scratch have that everyone else doesn't? I wanted to find out, so I asked the good folk at ShotScope to send me all the data they had on scratch golfers, which was a lot, so I now know exactly how good scratch golfers are at every part of the game, so I can compare. But this video isn't only for people who are hoping to get to scratch. Whatever your handicap is now, whatever your goals are, it should give you a benchmark and help you see which parts of your game need the most work. It will help you realise that good golf isn't actually as impossible as you might think, and perhaps most importantly of all, it will stop you having unrealistic expectations over every shot, which in turn should mean that you can make some better decisions and just enjoy golf a bit more. Let me know in the comments, I don't know why I was looking down as if the comments are actually there. Let me know in the comments what your current handicap is and what you think is the main thing you need to improve to get it down. Let's start with driver distance and how far scratch golfers hit it off the tee. By the way, let's just have a look at this view. Oh, yes please. How good is that? A typical scratch golfer averages 260 yards off the tee. That might be less than you expected, but remember, it is an average. I hit a drive 335 yards the other night.
Ooh, you're hard, showing off.
That doesn't mean that it's suddenly my average. And in fact, 2 holes later, I hit one that barely went 200 yards.
Snap back to reality.
ShotScope have got something called a performance average distance, which basically removes outliers. So if you hit a drive which whacks a tree and only goes 50 yards, it won't count that, which is what you want, because you don't want that to become part of your average. You want to know kind of how far you hit your clubs on a normal decent shot. Say if I hit my 7-iron 5 times and I hit 4 of them 160 yards, but one of them I shank and it goes 20 yards, suddenly it makes the average 132 yards. But that isn't useful information to me because I don't want to start hitting my 7-iron when I'm 132 yards out. So yeah, that performance average basically takes out any shots that are kind of obviously too short or too long. So say if you hit a shot which for some reason goes way longer than normal, like if you hit it off a road or you blade a wedge 200 yards or whatever, it'll remove that. So then your performance average is kind of a better reflection of how far you're hitting that club under normal circumstances. Anyway, the point is the performance average driving distance for scratch golfers is 285 yards, which is a pretty decent clip, I think. So if your good drives are a lot shorter than that, then you're giving up distance to the average scratch golfer. That's not to say that you have to hit it 285 yards with your driver to get to scratch. Obviously you don't have to tick every single box to be a scratch golfer. You know, no two golfers are the same, so you might be a bit shorter off the tee but a bit stronger than average in other areas and it might all balance out. It's the same on tour, but it's still useful to be able to benchmark yourself in each individual area so that you can decide what to work on. In terms of accuracy off the tee, scratch golfers hit 50% of fairways, which doesn't seem crazy high, and that's with all clubs. So holes where they've hit, you know, 3-wood, hybrid, long iron or whatever. With driver, they hit 46% of fairways. So don't expect to hit every fairway and don't think that you need to in order to shoot low scores.
Your best strokes gained tee to green since 2019. How good did it feel?
Was it?
Yeah.
I only hit 5 fairways. There you go.
Good
Take
approach.
that, traditionalists.
What about hitting greens? Scratch golfers hit 62% of greens in regulation, which works out at just over 11 per round. love it. So scratch golfers are hitting fewer than half the fairways with their driver and less than 2/3 of greens in regulation. So I think we've kind of dispelled the myth that scratch golf is all about fairway green for the whole round. On approach shots, with anything longer than an 8-iron in their hand, a scratch golfer misses the green more often than they hit it. That one surprised me. With a 7-iron they hit the green 47% of the time, with a 6-iron it's 40%, 5-iron 28%, 4-iron 22%. Even with the shorter clubs, they still miss the green quite a bit. Talking about their performance average, exactly 285 yards that drive was. Oh, it might be on a just long left. Even with a wedge in their hand, a scratch golfer misses the green more than a quarter of the time. I found that really surprising. And from 100 yards out, on the fairway, a scratch golfer is more likely to make a bogey or worse than a birdie. If you picture a scratch golfer standing in the middle of the fairway with a wedge in hand, you're kind of expecting them to be knocking the flag out, but they're just not. On approach shots between 50 and 110 yards, they hit it to 27 feet on average. They hit it within 15 feet less than a third of the time. And remember, these are pretty short shots that we're talking about. It just makes you realise next time you start beating yourself up for not knocking it stiff on like an easy shot, it's probably your expectations that were wrong rather than the actual shot that you hit. Across approach shots from all distances, their average proximity to the hole is just under 61 feet, which is quite far away from the hole, isn't it? Stuck it on the par 5 in 2. Happy days. See if we can roll her in for an eagle. Come on, Robert! Bird! That's definitely inside 61 feet. So yeah, hopefully you can see that scratch golf isn't all about knocking every shot stiff and making a ton of birdies. They make 2 to 3 birdies a round on average, and I know quite a few higher handicappers who can make 2 birdies in a round and still shoot in the 90s.
And I personally feel their pain.
In 41% of the rounds they play, a scratch golfer makes 1 birdie or less, and in 17% of the rounds they don't make any birdies at all. I'm actually way short. This is probably not going to be a birdie. One of the biggest differences between a scratch golfer and a mid-handicapper isn't the number of birdies they make, it's the number of double bogeys that they don't make. Kind of makes sense when you think about it, because obviously their aim is to shoot level par. Every golfer in most rounds is going to make a few bogeys. Obviously the occasional magic round you might go bogey free, but that's going to be pretty rare. So most rounds you're going to make, 2 or 3 bogeys. Therefore you need those 2 or 3 birdies they make to kind of balance the books. But if you chuck in 1 or 2 doubles, suddenly you're going to need loads of birdies to get yourself back down to like level par. And yeah, as we've seen, they're just not making that many birdies on average. Scratch golfers make as many bogeys as they do birdies, but they just don't make many doubles. It was a point that my pal Matt Pettit made when he was talking about how he's got from 12 to 2.
Yeah, basically, like the biggest thing is not making double bogeys. Like if you have a bad hole and make a bogey, that's all right. Don't make double. Find a way of not making a double.
That's not to say that scratch golfers never make a double. Obviously they do occasionally, but it's once every 39 holes on average, which I think is pretty impressive. A 14 handicapper makes 3.5 double bogeys per round on average. Oh, so good. That's perfect, apart from the fact I think it's probably right by that sprinkler, so I could be getting pretty wet. By the way, I haven't told you yet, but I'm playing a lot better lately, and I've not had the chance yet to make a video and explain how and why, but I'll be doing that soon. So yeah, subscribe if you haven't already and that's the kind of thing that you're interested in. and be quick, because obviously by the time I get around to making that video I could well be playing crap again. Can I hit this without getting soaked? This is not looking good. Hit it okay, bit right, didn't get soaked, so class that as success. Everyone always says that another key to being a scratch golfer is having a really good short game, so let's get down to this green and have a look at if that's actually true. So yeah, scratch golfers are hitting 11 greens in regulation on average, so missing 7. They get up and down just over half the time at 56%. Oh, I think I'm well short. Oh no, that's the tissue that's short. Oh dear, I might have gone a bit long. Oh no, right at the back of the green. Better than I thought. Okay, so I've just gone through the back of this green to have a look at how a scratch golfer would do from this position. On short shots inside 20 yards, scratch golfers hit it to 7 feet on average, and from 20 to 40 yards they hit it to 14 feet on average. So not bad, but yeah, they're not knocking it stiff on even those really short shots. But they are giving themselves a chance to hold that putt and save par, and what they're not doing is making a nightmare from the edge of the green and taking 4 shots to get down, which obviously happens more with some higher handicappers. Oh, blade! Absolutely bladed it straight across the green. Oh, God! I mean that. Oh. Sit down. This is not going well. Sit down. Sit down. Sit down. Sit down. Next to the green, I've walked off with a 7. Let's hit this, see how I get on. Just flop it over you, shall I? Not brilliant, I was more worried about not smashing it into the camera than getting it close. Right, so while we're on the green, let's finish up and talk about putting. So scratch golfers have 29.3 putts per round on average. That makes sense, as 36 putts would obviously be 2 putts per hole, and yeah, as we've seen, they're kind of getting up and down 3 or 4 times, maybe making 3 birdies, so that's kind of, yeah, 6 or 7 one putts, which brings you down to just over 29. From 6 to 12 feet, they make 42.8% of putts. There we go. And from 12 to 18 feet, they make about a quarter. Drop some teeth, Peg. That's not quite far enough. Oh, one take. From outside 24 feet, they're making less than 1 in 10. Nobody makes many putts from that range. You could put a tour pro, a scratch golfer, and a high handicapper at 20 feet from the hole, and they'll all 2-putt the majority of the time. But again, what separates scratch golfers from higher handicappers isn't doing something incredible and holding every putt, it's kind of not doing something bad. So one thing I thought was quite impressive is that a scratch golfer only has a 3-putt once every 39.2 holes of golf, so less than 1 every 2 full rounds. Whereas a 20 handicapper, 3 putts almost 20% of greens. So they're having 3.6 extra shots per round just in 3 putts. I know that strokes gained says that the long game is the biggest differentiating factor and all that kind of jazz, but I also think there's value in picking the low-hanging fruit first. So if you're a high handicapper and you're like 50 yards behind a scratch golfer off the tee, that's going to be quite a hard gap to close. Whereas if you're having 3, 4, 5 3-putts per round and a scratch golfer isn't having any, it's probably easier to reduce that number even just by 1 or 2, and you've actually saved 1 or 2 shots. I'd say that's an easier differential to close the gap by just finding a way to have 1 or 2 fewer 3-putts around. From inside 6 feet, scratch golfers make 93% of their putts. 25 handicappers make 82.5%. So So if you think about how many putts you have inside 6 feet in a round, you'll realise that over the course of a season, or even just over the course of a few rounds, that difference is really going to start to add up. I think that's an area where people can make improvements quite quickly. You're not going to have to spend months in the gym or doing speed training like you might have to start closing that gap in distance, just to start holding a few more 3, 4, 5 foot putts. Again, I'm not saying that driving and distance and that sort of stuff isn't important. Clearly it is. I just think that if you're limited for time, which most of us are, pick the things that you can actually make some noticeable improvements on. In terms of scoring, scratch golfers average 0.94 over par for 18 holes. They play par 3s and par 4s over par, which is kind of normal really, like even tour pros do that. So they average 3.16 on par 3s and 4.09 on par 4s. And then on par 5s, same as on tour, they average under par at 4.76. So looking at all these numbers, I think it's important to accept that on any hole and pretty much from any approach shot position, par is a good score. So make a few bogeys, make a few birdies, try to avoid making any doubles, and that's how you play scratch golf. It's simple, isn't it? I hope you've enjoyed the video. Give it a thumbs up if you have, subscribe if you haven't already and you feel like doing that, and I'll see you in the future.